This is the Court Leader's Advantage, a podcast series for court professionals and by court professionals. Brought to you by thecourtleader.net and in cooperation with NACM, the National Association for Court Management. Alaska has quietly become a brave pathfinder in court-based artificial intelligence. Last month, the state released the Alaska Virtual Assistant, AVA, an AI chatbot designed to help court users navigate the probate court system. The path to launch, however, has been anything but smooth. Delays have piled up, expectations have collided with reality, and media coverage has been more skeptical than supportive. So what has really happened behind the scenes? I'm Pete Kiefer, and welcome to the Court Leaders Advantage podcast series. This month, we're talking to Alaska's court leaders about their bold new initiative, nicknamed AVA. We're going beyond the headlines. What did Alaska learn? And what should every court considering using AI in the future take away from their experience? Our moderator today is Roger Rand, Technology Manager for the Multnomah County Circuit Court in Portland, Oregon, and the current Vice President for the National Association for Court Management. On our panel to discuss today's topics are Jeannie Sato, Director of Access to Justice Services for the Alaska State Court System; Aubrey Souza, Principal Court Management Consultant for the National Center for State Courts; and Tom Martin, Founder and CEO of the legal technology and artificial intelligence firm LawDroid. Thank you all for joining today's podcast. So let's join Roger and our panel as they discuss AVA, Alaska's virtual assistant.
Jeannie, please describe your role in the Alaska State Court System and how you became involved in the development of the Alaska Virtual Assistant, AVA. How do you envision court customers using it?
Sure, thanks. And thanks for having us today. I am the Director of Access to Justice Services for the Alaska Court System, and that includes a variety of access to justice programs, including our family law self-help phone line, our self-help web pages, our dispute resolution programs, court forms, language access, all sorts of programs, including some tech programs. We got involved in this when we heard the National Center for State Courts was soliciting applications for a grant to build a generative AI chatbot, and we applied and were thrilled to receive the grant. And how we envision our customers using this is to help guide them through the material we have. The Alaska Court System has over 220 web pages on self-help content in about a dozen different case type areas. And our hope is that by using a chatbot, it will help users navigate through all those web pages to find the exact information they need, especially as users move to mobile phones for more of their internet searching. And we thought a chatbot could help direct people right to the information they were looking for.
Tom, you and LawDroid have been working to help design AVA since its inception. Tell us more about the design of AVA and how it works.
Thanks, Roger. Happy to be here, and just wanted to supplement that, LawDroid, we've been around for this is the 10th year. We've been in existence and worked with a number of legal aid organizations and state courts, and very proud of our work on this project. To emphasize what Jeannie was saying is that the whole point is that web pages, they have lots of great information, but it does put the burden on the user to try to find it. And so the opportunity with generative AI and with chatbots is that you could simply ask the question and get the answer and get it very quickly. And so we use retrieval augmented generation, which is a way of connecting an AI to source documents and then having it find the most relevant information, synthesize it, and then provide it back to the user. And so that's, at a very high level, how it works. Of course, there's a lot of detail that goes into the specifics of what choices we made to use what systems and techniques and all that has definitely evolved over the past year.
Aubrey, what is your role with the National Center for State Courts, and how are you involved in the development of AVA?
So I'm Aubrey Souza. I'm a principal court management consultant at the National Center for State Courts, and I'm part of our Access to Justice team. And my work generally focuses on technology and process design that helps courts serve their court users. I inside of this project, I often describe my role as the translator between the courts and the technical, where I know enough about each to be dangerous, but might not be the subject matter expert for either. But understanding enough about the legal information and the procedural aspects of courts helps me translate that into the technical execution with Tom as our partner there. And so in this project, that meant for me by diving both into the legal information, evaluating for accuracy the results, but then also working with to structure some of the prompting and the technical choices that we made in the background.
Aubrey and Tom, I have a question for both of you. So the Alaska courts received support and funding from NCSC for this project. Was that funding sufficient to complete the work, or did the state need to contribute additional resources? And also, should other state court systems view NCSC funding as a realistic opportunity for similar initiatives? Aubrey?
Yeah, so maybe I'll start kind of with high level, and then Tom, you can give a little bit of color in the details there. So as Jeannie mentioned earlier, this project was funded by a grant to the National Center for State Courts, and we held an application process for courts to apply to participate in a chatbot project, which was going to be without a cost to the court during the development. Part of the application and selection criteria was the understanding that if we were successful, the court would then be responsible for funding going forward to sustain the project, but there would be no responsibility while we were in development. And it was originally imagined to be about a 4-month project. And so I think that the short answer to was it enough is no. And Tom, maybe that's where I'll let you fill in some of the color there. But I'll just quickly add to answer kind of the last question of whether courts should look out for opportunities to work with the National Center and funding opportunities. Yes, we are often looking for court partners on projects that are already funded. And the best way to learn about those is to subscribe to our At the Center newsletter, which you can do on our website.
Thank you, Aubrey. Tom?
Yeah, thank you. So when we first, when LawDroid and NCSC first had this conversation, when we first started the conversation, it was early on, into the idea of chatbots being used to answer legal questions, and it was a unique opportunity. There was that contest, and applications were submitted. So initially, I think we were a little over optimistic in how quickly we could put it together. My experience with a lot of different customers, a lot of different organizations, legal aid, state courts, is that the average is around 9 months, and sometimes 9 months to a year to complete. So it's not as outside of the norm about the length of time that this took. It does take time. And as far as the actual budget, it was, it reflected the initial kind of idea of 4 months or so. And, I've been very mission driven. LawDroid is dedicated to expanding access to justice. And so the balance of the time over a year was completely, done by me on my dime. So it was volunteered time. I didn't seek, nor did I get any additional funding to do that. I was very happy to work with the partners that I have, and I think it's really a great collaboration in that we both shared everything we could with each other to come up with the best result.
I'll share, Roger, the court system, we didn't know any of that until we were almost done with the project. And we weren't surprised because Tom's been an amazing partner to work with, and he really is mission driven. But I just think it's really outstanding how National Center and Tom work together to help us build this and just keep working to make it as good a product as it can be.
So about testing, Jeannie, how did you test Ava, and did you bring in actual court customers?
Well, we actually had an interesting situation in that shortly before we started the project, I became a self-represented litigant in an Alaska probate estate case for my mother's estate. So I actually was going into it with a little bit different perspective than some of our other team members, because I had been wading through our web pages and I had been filling out forms and becoming a personal representative. So that was a unique perspective we had. At the beginning, our team, myself and the other people on the Alaska team, we came up with 91 questions that we thought users might ask over a variety of topics related to probate estates. And we would ask Ava, we would record the question and record the answer. And then we would look to see how we thought Ava was doing in answering the questions in accordance with our knowledge base that I think we'll talk about a little bit later. And then we would give Tom feedback, and Tom would work his magic behind the scenes and improve Ava, and we would start again. And it only took about 2 times going through 91 questions that we realized we don't need 91 questions to get see the issues and concerns and pros and cons of what Ava's doing. So we switched to 15 questions, and we chose some that Ava had answered incorrectly in the past, some that we thought were pretty common that a lot of people would ask, and some that we thought were pretty tricky and very Alaska specific. So it was those 15 questions that we worked on throughout most of the process until we got to a point where we thought, we think Ava's really there. We went back and did the 91 again. The second set of testing we did outside of court staff was Alaska Legal Services Corporation. The court and Alaska Legal Services have a really good collaborative relationship. So we gave them the link to Ava and asked them to have their probate attorneys and staff go through and ask some questions, work through with some clients if they had the opportunity, and give us feedback to help refine Ava before we launched. And then we did do some outside testing that Aubrey graciously took care of, and I'm sure she can explain it.
Aubrey.
Yes. So as Jeannie mentioned, the user testing that we were doing throughout was largely done by kind of like experts who are familiar with the process of probate or have at least a legal background and work in probate. And so while we weren't going to test with real court users experiencing a probate case, we wanted to make sure that it was used and tested by people without that background. And so we did what we call family and friends user testing, which is neighbors, friends, family of the NCSC staff, and whoever we could recruit to use the tool. So what that looked like was we developed scenarios that were realistic and diversified in kind of what we were targeting inside of those scenarios. So different kinds of probate, different issues, and gave that to them to take on a persona and said, okay, this is what you are experiencing. Can you use the chatbot as you might if you were somebody in this situation? And so as they tried out Ava, we asked them to kind of think out loud, tell us how they were understanding it, how they were forming their next question, and got some observation of them using the tool and understanding what it would look like for somebody using this chatbot for the first time. And then they asked them to just use it all the way through until they would have naturally decided to stop using it, and then asked a few just general feedback questions. One of the most important being, do you know what your next step is? And that question was really enlightening because it captured how they were walking away, and where one of the goals of the chatbot was to be actionable. It captured whether they felt that they knew what the next step was and whether they were walking away thinking that it was actionable, but also whether they actually understood the action. So then now using their own words and language to describe what that next step was really, really helpful for us. Maybe a quick story. One of our user testers, when asked that question, had answered, yes, I'm going to go get a personal representative. And a personal representative in an Alaska probate case is kind of like your executor. And what was funny about, I shouldn't say funny, but was fun, I guess, about that response was that in the scenario, they were the personal representative. And so they did not understand that term, did not understand their role in a probate case. And while, we chuckle because it was a family member of mine who I adore, I chuckle, but it's also led us to significant changes in how we were going to shape answers. When definitions are provided, how we let people know they can ask for definitions if they don't understand it. And it was just really helpful to where, as people with a legal background, it's difficult to take our blinders off sometimes and see where those gaps are. And the user testing very quickly, with only like 7 individuals, we were able to find kind of those holes that we needed to address before launching.
Hallucinations are always a concern with these AI chatbots. During testing, how often did Ava provide incorrect information? And what have you been doing to eliminate hallucinations in the final release? Jeannie?
This was really interesting. As I mentioned before, we had quite a bit of content in our probate estate web pages, and we did not use a model where Ava would pull right from the web pages. We took all that content and basically copied it onto something that we called our knowledge base, and Tom then could tweak the knowledge base. And we only wanted Ava to give information that was in the knowledge base because our overriding concern was doing no harm, and we really had a low risk tolerance for any risk to any of our customers being harmed by using Ava. So as we started, Tom uploaded the knowledge base, which mimics our web pages, and we started testing. We noticed that Ava was answering things that didn't make sense. So to me, without a tech background, I heard the word hallucination. I could tell something was wrong. And one of the easiest examples was when Ava was talking about finding a lawyer. Ava answered, you could check with your local law school's alumni association, but Alaska is the only state without a law school. So we knew Ava was either making assumptions or making things up. A similar instance was Ava was talking about something called summary administration proceedings, which we had never heard of. It's not on our webpage, it's not on any forms. But I was able to go onto Google and do a Google generative AI search. And Google brought me to a national probate webpage that said in Alaska, there's summary administration proceedings. And it cited a statute which I could look at. And that statute is actually titled Summary Administration Small Estates. So I was like, aha, we have small estates. Everyone in Alaska calls them small estates. We put that on the forums. The judges and lawyers say small estates. So I thought Ava was looking outside our knowledge base to the internet, but I learned through the process that from Tom, it has to do with Ava's training, and Tom was able to work on the back end of Ava to stop that and keep Ava more limited.
And Tom, do you have any follow-up on that?
People watching this might not be familiar with me. I'm also a lawyer. I've been licensed for over 25 years out of California. And I mention that here for hallucinations is that I take these things just as seriously as you do. Like providing quality information to people that are going to rely on it, that's important, that they get good information. And so there's a number of things that everyone has been learning over time when it comes to generative AI about hallucinations. And it's not one thing, right? There's the obvious one where it makes something up completely that's not factual. But there's also where it draws on what it was trained on, what we call parametric memory. And it hasn't searched the web, but it remembers this and it brings it up because it thinks it's being helpful. Yet another type of hallucination is where it's trying to connect the dots between two separate concepts that is presented in the source documents where there's some kind of gap, and it's trying to fill that gap. And so there's a lot of different types of hallucinations that come up, and there's different ways to control them. One of which is what AI model you choose to use. That's extremely important. And I think that, a lot of people make the mistake of thinking, oh, well, just choose the latest, greatest model, Gemini 3 Pro or, Claude. Actually, Sonnet 5 is about to come out this week. That it's just a matter of the latest, greatest. But that's not the case, because very often the latest, greatest, they want to prove to you that they're the smartest guy in the room, and they try to connect the dots, and that may not be what you want. And every organization we work with comes to this from a different place. And when we're working with a state court especially, the chatbot is essentially the voice projecting this information. So getting it right is extremely important. And so, you don't want it doing any of that. You want it to be basically the kind of persona of a lawyer, not a lawyer, not acting as a lawyer, but have the same traits: rule following, careful, right? Measured in what they can do and what they can't do. And so some of that is covered by prompt engineering, which Aubrey helped in detail with to put limits on what the chatbot could talk about. And then there's some behind the scenes actual programming that we do to prevent it from accessing the web, to prevent it from relying on anything other than source documents, and then really focusing it on only using the source documents, rather than its parametric memory. So there's a constellation of different considerations we take in to make it work and work reliably.
So Tom, release of AVA has been delayed. What have been the chief reasons for that delay?
Sure. And I guess first of all, respectfully, I want to reject the premise of the question of it being delayed significantly. Like, basically, it's been the hard work that we put in to get it to a place where we can all stand behind it, and be proud of it. And I think one of us had a conversation, like even the journalist who actually wrote it up, it wasn't the headline that they picked for this particular article. But it is, in print, and so like it needs to be sensational and get people's attention, which it has. But I think if anyone reads through what we actually did and listens to this, they can see for themselves and know that we just put in the work necessary to get it to a place where we can stand behind it. And so that's what the time went into. It went into a lot of testing. The original 91 questions, those take time. It also takes time to put together a larger team of people. The Alaska State Court had about nine? I think about 9 people on staff that were meeting regularly with the rest of us, and so that also took time. One part that people, I think, discount at the beginning is the amount of time it takes to organize the information and to make it usable for the AI, because it's really important. So people have the misunderstanding that you just throw information into it, it answers every question, and it's just magic. And it doesn't work that way. You can't, for example, put cases or statutes or information like that into an AI and just expect it to get it. Now it understands it and can answer any question. In fact, you want to have the source material as close as possible to the reading level, the level of generality, the specifics of what you want to show up in an answer for the layperson, and have them as close as possible for 2 reasons. Number one, that it covers all the the bases that you want to relay, and then number 2, because the closer it is to each other, the less likely that AI is going to try to connect the dots, because it doesn't have to. And so organizing the material, the rounds of testing, and again, I'll mention it again, that every organization that I've worked with comes from a different place. Each one has different preparation in terms of the documents they have available. Each one has a different risk tolerance, right? So if it's a legal aid organization, they would be more likely to have a lesser risk tolerance, because they want to help people and they want to get out there and do this. And they also have like they don't have a lot of staff to help out and throw bodies at the problem. With the court system, the risk profile is much more conservative for obvious reasons. And I think Jeannie remarked once that, if you had a scale for like 10 being the most, like, let's just get it out there, whatever it is, being 10, like, just get it out, 0 being like, nope, that Alaska had like a -10 in terms of being careful. So that definitely, was reflected in us being as careful as possible.
I have to laugh a little because I think our team was usually 5 or 6 people, but I know we were kind of a lot. So we must have seemed 50% bigger. But that was part of the relationship we have with Tom. It was really great that we were able to be really open and talk a lot about things happening. And that was part of what took time, is that we were very concerned about making sure we did no harm and all our customers got good information. And what we learned along the way was that our web pages, we think, have a lot of really good information for people going through a formal, a probate estate case. And it's designed in FAQ, question and answer format, 8th-ish grade reading level, and it works for people. But what we learned when we downloaded that into the knowledge base we were using and that Ava was looking through to get answers, the formatting that makes a good web page does not always make a good knowledge base for a large language model. So we did take about a 2 or 3 month break. We worked really hard with Aubrey and 3 attorneys on our staff, and we really made changes to the web or the knowledge base, and we joked we learned how to speak computer to change the web page to be more something a large language model could read. So just an easy example is when you're going through a web page and you click on the informal probate page and it says, how do I start a case? I know because I'm on that page, it's how to start an informal probate case. If I click from the home page, formal probate, and it says, how do I start a case? It's telling me how to start a formal probate case. But Ava had trouble distinguishing that there were the exact same question 2 places in the knowledge base with different answers. One talked about informal and one talked about formal. So Aubrey and our Alaska team went through and changed all those things. So now in the knowledge base, it said, how do I start an informal probate case? How do I start a formal probate case? And that's just one simple example of dozens and dozens and dozens of edits we made over this 112-page document. So that was a chunk, was really learning how to make the best knowledge base we could that Ava could get more accurate answers. So I think that was also part of the whole process we all went through together and learned about.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeannie. Aubrey, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, so Tom had mentioned an article, and maybe I'll give a little bit of background on that because I think it's a good example of oftentimes how we talk about the chatbot and the response that we get. So the article had the headline, Alaska's court system built an AI chatbot. It didn't go smoothly. But as Tom mentioned, once you kind of read through the article, it's not exactly what it's outlining. It's talking about, we might have learned some things along the way. We did have to pivot in a few different places, but it was all part of a very intentional, thoughtful, and very responsive to the goal of the chatbot, which was doing no harm and protecting court users and giving accurate legal information. And so the contrast between maybe the headline of that article is often what I think a lot of the response to our presentations or conversations is, well, it didn't go smoothly. Like, why did it take so long? But then once we talk about it, it maybe makes more sense. And I think that part of that is this idea that AI is going to let us skip all of the important steps that are really necessary to be able to do something like this. And that's chatbots or other applications of AI in the legal field. Without that underlying legal information already that Alaska had, this would have taken us much longer. So we couldn't skip that step, and we still had to do work with that legal information, but we had a lot of the necessary tools, and it was configuring it and getting it right and thinking about the personality of the bot, how answers were going to be structured so that it was meeting the expectations. So I think it's a good example of the conversations around applying AI in the legal field generally, but particularly for courts. AI is not going to let us skip those steps, and we didn't skip any of the steps. And we're just really thoughtful about, I think, each one along the way. And yeah, maybe the risk tolerance in Alaska was different than others, and you can decide for yourselves what your risk tolerance is and how long those steps should take you. But that doesn't mean that you're going to get to skip them. And so the delay, again, we can call it a delay. We can say it didn't go smoothly, but I think it was appropriate for a project that was the goal was to provide legal information to court users.
So Jeannie and Tom, what is the plan for ongoing monitoring, maintenance, and expansion of AVA? Is there a plan for in the works?
Well, Tom had mentioned the dashboard that he built that all of our court team can go into, and we can see every question that anyone has asked Ava and get every answer. So that helps us to be looking at what's coming in, what kind of questions are happening, and then confirm Ava's giving information we're comfortable with. And we still have a method for communicating with Tom if anything comes up that we have concerns, and we can, continue to collaborate to keep improving Ava as time goes. the court doesn't have any plans right now to expand other than that. We think we'll probably go at least 6 months to a year, just really monitoring AVA and watching it grow and fine-tuning it before we would think about expanding it to any other areas, because it is a large project, and we're just excited to watch AVA launch now.
Thank you. Tom?
Yeah, so like Jeannie mentioned, we have kind of a ticketing system like most developers have, and if anything ever comes up, to just let us know. We also give them announcements if we're rolling out improvements, and Alaska will benefit from further improvements we roll onto the platform, which, by the way, include voice. One thing we didn't mention is that people can actually ask a question by just talking to Ava, or they can click a button to have it read aloud to them. So it's been very intentional to increase the number of people that can benefit from the information.
One last question for all of you. We've talked about one of the takeaways already, that this is a process. It's a project that has taken longer than maybe all of you may have expected at the onset. But what are some other takeaways from this project? Tom?
Yeah, thank you for asking, because when I really had time to think about it, there's three things that stand out to me. One is that working with people you trust is immensely important. And obviously, you build a lot of trust over months of work together. And second, that collaboration with each other, to hear what each other has to say, and to do your best to try to achieve a vision, which is the third thing, the vision of a commitment to quality. And so that, to me, is really what this story is about. It's about those three things and how we work together to achieve that.
Thank you, Jeannie.
I would really echo everything Tom said. I've been involved in other court tech projects, and this has been just an amazing team, and I'm really grateful for everything everyone's done. On a shallower level, one of the things I think when we applied for the grant and we were so excited to get it, we thought about building this great chatbot, but we've learned and we'll realize with future projects, it really isn't building a project, it's creating a new service that will need ongoing maintenance and ongoing staff dedicated time. And so I think that was a good lesson for us as we look at new projects in the future, to just remember that it's a long-term commitment.
Thank you, Jeannie. Aubrey?
Well, so I'll continue and just say that the partnership was a really great example of just like working with teams and learning from each other. I learned so much from the team in Alaska, a lot of it about probate, but a lot of it beyond that, and also from Tom. So it was really just a great example of how to work together, give each other feedback and be honest, but then work through it. But if I was going to have somebody walk away with like one thing from this project, I think that it really is that the promise of AI is that we're going to be able to skip and catch up when we might have missed things in the past. But I think that this project emphasized for me how much importance those steps have to be able to utilize AI. You can't automate a process if you don't have a process already. And here, we didn't have the robust information that Alaska already had, we would not have been able to turn it into the chatbot. It would have taken us much longer, and it would have gone, as people say, much less smooth than it did. And so those things remain important, and AI will help you maybe get there faster, but it is important, and maybe that is the motivation to be able to use them, but keep on doing all of the other important work too.
Our sincere thanks to Aubrey, Jeannie, Tom, and Roger for candidly sharing Alaska's experience bringing AI-based customer assistance into the state's court system. Their journey, marked by an inspiring vision, setbacks, and hard-won lessons, offers invaluable insights for courts nationwide as we all wrestle with how to use artificial intelligence responsibly and effectively. And to you dedicated court professionals joining us today, your daily commitment to fairness, service, and excellence is the quiet force that sustains public trust in our courts and strengthens the communities we serve. Thank you for the work you do every day. Join us again on Tuesday, March 17th for another episode in the Court Leaders Advantage podcast series as we take on the issues facing courts today. I'm Pete Kiefer, and thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us today. The Court Leaders Advantage is a regular podcast series on courts and court administration. Today's episode will be available on our website, on the Court Leader website, on YouTube, Facebook, iTunes, LinkedIn, and on Instagram. Did you enjoy this episode? Please share the podcast link on your social media pages. Every share helps spread the word about the vital work court administrators do to strengthen justice in our communities. Become part of the conversation. If you have questions, comments, or ideas for future episodes, email us. Our address is CLApodcast, that's all one word, at nacomnet.org. Did you hear an interesting comment by one of the panelists that you would like to review, but you don't want to search the entire episode to find it? The additional resources section of the webpage has a complete transcript of today's episode with the time markers for when each question was asked. Find the discussion question on the transcript, and next to it is the time that question was asked. You can either review the comments on the transcript or listen to the panelist's comment on the audio or video recordings. Remember, if you don't have time to watch an episode, you can always listen to the audio version. Listen in your car or on the bus on your way to or from work. You never have to miss an episode. I'm Pete Kiefer, and on behalf of our guests, the Court Leaders website, and the National Association for Court Management, thank you, and have a great day. The views, information, and opinions expressed during this episode are solely those of the host and the individual presenters. They do not necessarily represent the position of the National Association for Court Management.